hike in transport fares and, of course, other essential commodities and services. That's one challenge this government knows should be solved as quickly as possible. And we understand that there's so much of discussion just to ensure that the issues are resolved as quickly as possible. The president himself had long promised that government will take out time, create frameworks to ensure that there is a review, upward review, that is, of wages for workers across this country. And to that end, there's also some synergy now being sought between the federal government and all of the 36 states of the federation, just to ensure that there's some sort of equilibrium across board with regards to the welfare of workers. We all knew right from the start that the removal of fuel subsidy was going to mean that Nigerians would have to pay a price. And obviously, that's the price we're paying now, and we're hoping that the pain is alleviated as quickly as possible. We understand that there are also conversations around appointments within the corridors of power. That's talking at the federal level now. But then we will be having that conversation on the show this morning to see what the direction is like, what the indicators are saying regarding what the nature of appointment will look like, the caliber of men and women who will be appointed into various positions to help galvanize the policies of this new government. And we hope that happens as quickly as possible with the right intentions, with Nigerians at heart, ultimately. But quickly, let's take a look at the papers this morning. Let's see This Day newspaper. When you look at This Day newspaper, just like several other papers, you realize that it has the big story as well, like we've seen with other papers equally. It says, restrained by court, NLC 2UC reached tentative agreement with federal government over subsidy. Restrained by court, NLC TUC reach tentative, obviously that's the operative word, tentative agreement with FG over subsidy. Hopefully, again, that should become a permanent thing. Above the nameplate of This Day, Tinubu orders security agencies to share information intelligence on counter-terrorism. Apparently, that's the way to go now. All right, let's turn to the Sun newspaper. It says subsidy removal on the Sun, NLC TUC suspend strike with 2 riders under that headline to resume talks June 19. That's in barely 2 weeks' time. FG Labour Joint Committee to review minimum wage. Shocking revelation at Presidential Election Tribunal. And you're wondering what exactly is that revelation? Tinubu APC's agents truncate uploading of results in Rivers. PDP witness. Assigned result sheet for Nasarawa State under duress, says another. OBLP tender more INEC results in 8 states. These are big stories for you on today's Daily Sun newspaper. All right. The National Star is not left behind amongst those dailies that are featuring the fuel subsidy story and all of the issues around labor and the proposed strike, which, as we now know, has been suspended. Fuel subsidy cost stops NLC 2UC from planned strike. NLC TUC obey court order, suspend strike, parties to continue negotiations on wage increase, palliative. And above the big headline there, court orders Keyamo to pay Atiku ICPC 10 million naira. Nigeria's electricity export crashed by 27%, $58.1 million in 1 year. Federal High Court acquits former HOS or Ronsaye of fraud. That was the head of service in the days of former President Dr. Goodluck Jonathan. Rivers pastor to die by hanging for multiple murder. New National Star newspaper wants a partner on campaign against drug abuse. And then at the very foot of today's National Star, it says Atiku Tinubu not qualified to be declared president. PDP witness tells tribunal. PDP accuses APC of attack on its members, journalists at Ogun Election Tribunal. Nigeria's merchandise trade hits 12.046 trillion naira in Q1 of 2023. Cross River Governor appoints Abuja NUJ Chair Ogbeche Chief Press Secretary. Those are stories from the National Star, and then the Vanguard is our next port of call. All right, the Vanguard also has several of these stories. But just before we go into that, I'd like you to quickly meet my guests this morning on the program, who will join me in helping to straighten perspectives into these stories this morning. My guest on the program this morning is Haruna Braimo. Haruna Braimo is a public affairs analyst as well as a spokesperson for International Peace Commission. It's a delight to have you on the program this morning.
Thank you very much, Rudy. It's my pleasure.
Great. I just want us to look at the papers together. I mean, from the papers we've looked at so far, one thing is very common amongst them is the suspension of the proposed strike by Labour. And now Vanguard as well is saying subsidy, NLC, TUC suspend strike. Then with a few riders here, it says Labour and the FG to meet again on June 19. FG, TUC and NLC to establish joint committee to review the proposal for any wage increase or award and establish framework and timeline for implement the issue of the framework to be established. All right, this is not the first time we've seen Labour negotiate with the federal government, even though this is a government that has been in power for less than 2 weeks. What do you think is different with all of these processes as against what we are seeing in the last 20 plus years?
The biggest difference is President Bola Ahmed Tinubu.
Okay.
Yeah, this is a man that is an embodiment of progress. A man that has the sagacity to harmonize policies together and drive frameworks to actualizable points where everybody involved and everybody affected will be happy. A man who is coming with a government of renewed hope, and that hope is beckoned on the trust with the people and the masses. And if you could see that the strike didn't go on, it's not because of anything but other than the reality on ground that the majority of Nigerians, though the subsidy issue has we have economic hardship on them, but we've all realized that we cannot continue to postpone evil days. And we now have a man we can trust to a very strong extent that if we allow this to go, every other thing that has to come in form of palliative programs to ameliorate the negative implication of such sacrifice will be done by his government.
Just to add to that, at the twilight of President Muhammadu Buhari's completion of his 8-year term in office, this story about the loan, $800 million loan that was secured by the government to be able to provide palliatives on account of the fuel subsidy removal became a big story. Now we hear that the federal government on the one hand, then Labour and of course NLC and TUC on the other hand are going to form synergy to review that facility itself. Why do we have so much of controversies around it? Some persons are saying it's an old loan, events have overtaken it. Others are saying, well, it's the loan that the immediate past government secured to be able to provide palliatives for Nigerians.
There was what the question should be, what gave rise to the $800 million issue? Mm-hmm. There was a research done by some of the international agencies, collaboration from the IMF and even with our National Bureau of Statistics, that exposes our level of multidimensional system.
Right.
And one of the approaches, one of the solutions or arrangement made by the international agencies or international donors or facility givers in this regard was to create some sort of grant and loans to support the Nigerian government.
Right.
So now, depending on how the Nigerian government is planning to utilize it, ironically, the loan was facilitated, and even this research was done during the time of former President Muhammadu Buhari. And now, Labour, remember when the issue of $800 million came up, there'll be, just like you said, a lot of controversies, a lot of innuendos, insinuation, and talks. And Labour is taking this advantage of the first subsidy now to now make a demand that they should be carried along, which is a welcome development, because we complain of some of the interventionist program of the former administration, like social welfare program, that they didn't really touch the real persons And some of them were mad with some fraud. Those were the accusations. And Labour now coming in from another dimension that we want to be part of this so that the real Nigerian workers will be carried along. And remember, the organized labor is beyond just government workers.
Right.
We have the NUT, the National Union of Road Transport. We have there are even the private sectors are participatory organs in the Nigerian Labour Congress. So with their involvement, I think it will be a more broadened. There will be a more broadened approach in finding out a strategy or strategizing on how to utilize such funds. It's a welcome development.
Great. I want to take you to. I'd like to take you to Tribune. Tribune newspaper this morning has a story. It says fuel subsidy removal. Kwara government reduces work days to 3 for civil servants. Or your constitute salary review committee. The highlight here is the Kwara government reducing work days to 3 for civil servants instead of 5. People are already saying civil service is not as productive as it ought to be ordinarily. Now you're even reducing it from 3 from 5 to 3. Isn't that counterintuitive?
No. There's an emergency at hand. You know, this situation management. 3 days, 3 working days for Kwara State is not going to be forever. You know, remember I told you that the issue of subsidy, the last time we were on air, talking about federalism, that the issue of subsidy affects, cut across both local government, states, and federal. The earlier we realize that we cannot concentrate everything on the federal, the better for us. I'm happy that the state governments are coming in and they are already thinking ahead on how to strategize. Because the subsidy charge every month is a first line charge on our income from the NNPC's revenue that is paid to Consolidated Revenue Fund account. And Consolidated Revenue Fund account is owned by the entire system, 774 local government, 36 state plus Abuja and the federal government. You understand? So it affects even the allocations to states. So whatever decision, and I even believe that the committee that is going to be set up to drive framework to create palliatives and other cushioning programs on this subsidy, they will also carry along representing the Nigerian Governors Forum. You understand? So I'm happy that the state government is going ahead to create such a new policy direction for their work for this particular period. Right. Talking about productivity of the workers, productivity is measured by if you want to evaluate someone's performance evaluation. One of the key index is the output of the person.
No, so, not by the number of days which they showed up for work. Of course.
What is your output? Even when you are something would be most of the times people work from house. During the COVID-19 period, we saw persons that were working from home in this smart age with technology and everything. So it's a matter of now fine-tuning your system to suit a particular issue at hand, at least for the meantime, until everything is sorted.
Still on that Tribune, Wike Akpabio Umahi meets with Tinubu. That happened yesterday. Yeah. There have been speculations. Some are saying, well, it has to do with the leadership of the 10th National Assembly. Others are saying, okay, it's probably about appointments and who should get what, who should go where, and so on and so forth. Do you have any insights you want to share in that regard?
It's pure political. Remember before, when Tinubu won the election, before he was sworn in, he was quoted to have said he's coming to form a government of national competence.
Regardless of your political affiliation.
If you feel and you know you can contribute meaningfully to the development of Nigeria, you can come on board. And I'm not surprised. But from the political angle, we cannot undermine the political contributions to the success of the Tinubu's presidency by Wike, former governor of Rivers State, who against all odds stood out and said this is the direction he wants to go in his state as far as presidential election is concerned. You understand? So see him around the villa now or the corridors of power, I'm not even surprised, because I won't be surprised tomorrow if he gets an appointment.
Okay, let's
he has worked.
and labor deserves his wage.
Remember, even the Bible says, come, O ye that have labor and heavily burdened, and you shall find rest. If the political rest of Wike is in Aso Rock,
by all means, you enjoy it.
Having worked and burdened for it, heavily burdened at that,
okay,
without criticism and whatever from his party. So he's finding rest.
All right, so we just want to look at a few more stories, everyone, from the Nation newspaper this morning. Just above the nameplate, it says, Fracas as Ogun Tribunal begins sitting. Don't hoard intelligence, Tinubu directs security agencies. I'd like us to talk about this real quick, Haruna, because it has to do with security. People have to be alive to enjoy quality healthcare, to go to the market, do business, and enjoy all of the social facilities that government needs to, has to provide for them. Some persons are saying by now, the president, His Excellency Tinubu, should have already shown the service chiefs the way out so he can bring in, quote unquote, fresh blood. Others are saying, well, he wants to understand the system well enough before he does what they refer to as a seamless transition between the current chiefs, service chiefs, and then the ones he intends to bring. Is that the right move? Is that what you expected in this direction? Because we're talking about terrorism, in its totality.
First of all, it's an applause to the president. He practically went to the office of
National Security
Advisor.
Right.
And from where he never ordered them to come to his office. He went to meet them, and from there talk about. Look at this. There's a statement talking about using the orchestral arrangement to make a statement in that regard. It's only for the deeps, where you understand how an orchestra is made, and it's arranged in a way to produce a very unique and a superlative result. That is the idea as far as security is concerned. So working together, sharing information, intelligence gathering and everything. One of the biggest bane of insecurity in Nigeria, beyond the insecurity itself, is the fact that most security agencies, they don't work in synergy. We've seen the issue of Boko Haram, when some police or some set of security agency will arrest a possible or an alleged terrorist. Another security agency will double cross them and hijack
investigation.
Hijack the investigation. We saw, in fact, looking at what even led to the Boko Haram during the Yaradua regime, the army caught Mohammed Yusuf, who was the founder of Boko Haram, and he was arrested. And as who they have, the right authority to hand over for investigation is the sister agency or another security agency. And they handed Mohammed Yusuf to the other security agency, from where he was summarily executed without investigation, which gave rise to the Shekara of this world, who became a monster in reaction to such a dastard. You understand? So this has been the bane, actually. And for Tinubu now, we now have a president who is coming out to tell you that this is the real way. He talks about knowledge even in that meeting, talking about without a proper counter-terrorism knowledge gathering, we cannot move. So we need to be up to date. Beyond the gadgets, the equipment, comes the fact that we need to have intelligent people in that regard to drive whatever we need to do to counter terrorism and promote security. A secured nation is a secure development. Yeah. You understand? Right. And you talked about which other one?
No, I was just talking about. I was talking about the issue of security and how that some persons believe by now the president should have.
Okay, all right. Talking about laying the
service chiefs.
No. We need to. Nigerians need to just begin to understand. The understanding of how government and governance run is another challenge for the citizenry. You understand? We don't really know these things, and we begin to quickly expect a lot from the president or our leaders, even the governors. We have a National Assembly that has not been constituted. You understand? National Assembly, because this month, by month ending, a new, maybe the 10th or the 11th National Assembly. The 10th National Assembly will come to be by the end of this month. Without National Assembly, who is going to confirm any appointment of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu?
So it has to be one step at a time.
One step at a time. Even other appointment, even ministerial appointment, even the essays, he can only for now get one or two appointments that does not really need National Assembly confirmation.
Right, which is what we're going to discuss at length in the course of our conversation here this morning, the issue of appointments and the dynamics and the politics around it. We're looking at sporting our son now. The big story there says, Villarreal, we can't stop Chikwueze from leaving. And you have a picture of the young man there. And then just a bit beneath the nameplates on your right end, there's a story there. The headline there says, Messi may snub £1 billion Saudi offer for Barca return. Okay, so those are basically the stories from the Sporting Sun today. Then Business Day is where we wrap it up on the paper review this morning. Business Day says airlines $812 million trap funds increase pressure on FX external reserves. Haruna, let's talk about this for a minute now, if you don't mind. The issue of these trapped funds owned by airlines upwards of $800 million. I was seeing several agencies and even notable Nigerians intervene in this matter. Is the protocol for repatriation of funds by foreign businesses so tight? So what's the challenge with this particular process?
Well, I've tried to follow this issue for some time now. What I can see is the high-handedness of foreign counterparts, and especially the foreign airlines influencing all this. Because I don't see anything really wrong in repatriating this fund. I don't see why they delayed up till now. This is over a year, if I'm not mistaken.
Right, well over a year.
You know, and this is a huge money that can even activate and catalyze a lot of growth in the aviation industry. You understand?
So who's to blame in this case? The airline operators or the Nigerian authorities?
Not necessarily the airline operators. They are the receiving end of the whole thing, the airline operators.
Because for want of better, they are the victim here.
They are the victims.
Yes.
You understand? I think the authority, the regulatory authority,
right.
There's something there. Maybe there's something they are not doing. They have to go more of, in international diplomacy, there are a lot of things that, this is in the economy aspect, this is not political aspect of diplomacy.
Right.
They need to put a lot of effort, straighten it out, a lot of mechanisms. There are the questions that the foreign people are asking too. They must have given you criteria to meet upon which these funds can be repatriated. The question is, have we met the criteria? If we cannot meet those criteria, Nigeria, the aviation industry also have its own regulatory design. You understand? We have the international best practice aspect of it. Compare those things. I know there was an issue that some foreign people or lawyers or what in outside Nigeria trying to. We have to quickly let them know that as much as you are speaking from the outside, Nigeria is also a country, a sovereign nation with its own laws. You understand? At a point, at any given point, when foreign policy or any aspect of another country's law is clashing with your own, there must be a way, there must be somewhere. This way I want the Nigerian government or the agency to come, the regulatory agency. That center, there must be an intercession where there will be give and take. Let some go so that this money, even if not all, some can begin to be repatriated back to the system. And it will help the aviation industry.
Right, it will, because we begin to hear that there's bad blood now
Seriously.
between the aviation authorities in Nigeria and these major airlines. And
of course.
Yeah, we realize that Nigeria is not alone in that category of nations where aviation airlines monies or funds are trapped. But then we hope this is resolved as quickly as possible, because apparently it has very grave consequences for our economy and even for our image as well on the international scene.
$800 million.
Right, that's a whole lot of money.
About $800 million is what we are borrowing to drive palliative.
To drive palliative
you can imagine if this
initiatives.
money comes to the industry, the aviation industry.
Right.
Expansion, more jobs creation, productivity, and real growth.
True. All right, everyone, we're taking a quick break now. Haruna Braimon and I will be here for another, to talk about poverty as it stands in Nigeria today, and what this government that has just been in office for 8 days can do in the next 4 years to alleviate it. We'll back shortly. Stay with us.
I am for everybody, I am for nobody.
No, you not talk about me.
No, in another way.
How are you sure, sir?
Keep quiet. I am in another way. I am for everybody, I am for nobody.
The only area where Buhari to face for that statement, now only appointment. When you are talking about project, the project is spelled out. If you say you need to spell out, what does this mean? But if you say appointment,